Welcome to episode 5 of this video build series where we are putting together the Seagull Checkmate, and this is one of the episodes I've been looking forward to. We're doing everything in the front of the plane, motor mount, the cowl, and this beautiful 5-inch spinner that it's coming into view right now, and you can see that with an 1810x3 prop. So let's stop chit-chatting, head over to the bench, and we'll get to work. The first step is to mount either your engine or your electric motor mount. I'm going electric, obviously, so the kit does come with this template for various engines, and you just have to find the marks that are relevant to what you're going to use. So I found this nice way to use 2 smaller clamps to hold the template right on the front of the firewall, make my marks, and we'll go ahead and drill the holes. I took my time with this, started with small bits, and then worked my way up to the right size. And because we're going to be pulling in blind nuts on the back side, I made these holes just a little bit bigger so that blind nut can fit in. Because we're not screwing into these holes, we're actually screwing in the blind nuts. And here's a test fitting of the electric motor mount. You can't see it here, but I am pulling in those blind nuts in the back side. So you'll have to do that, take your time, and it'll align just fine. After we're done with this, we then have to start playing and experimenting, depending on what motor you're going to use. This little board here slides back and forth to allow you to use different size electric motors. Utilize the little lines, the little markings on this to align your motor and then mount your motor as normal. And again, stepping up the drill sizes to drill the holes to mount the motor. We'll have to pull in blind nuts again, but you can see here is the Dual Sky GA3500R, all test mounted up, and now we can play with that board. Does it need to move up or all the way back? In this case, I needed to have it all the way back, so when we find where that needs to be, we'll just put some glue, and don't do what I do and use super thin, and see, you get a bunch of drips. It looks kind of ugly. It does kind of look funny, but I'm a little embarrassed about this. Don't use super thin on these. In fact, I was just setting it with CA, and you can see in this shot, I actually added a bunch of epoxy to keep that in there. And you can see the little tri-stock pieces that come with the kit just to kind of reinforce that motor mount. So now that the motor mount is all built up, it's sized the way we want, let's go ahead and put these screws in with some blue Loctite, because we won't be needing to take this off again. All right, now we're going to mount the motor, and I'm not going to use blue Loctite here, but we see here that these probably want to have a lock nut here with the washer. Here's where you can experiment with using some washers to bring it out 1/8 of an inch or whatnot. So I'm not going to use the Loctite because as we mount the cowl, we're going to be playing with the spacing, but we're going to have to remember to come back and put some Loctite on these bolts. One of the most important things about this assembly is use a tap and drill set, because I never ever trust factory blind nuts that were seated at the factory. Ask me how I know. It's because I messed up on Perestroika, and if you look at my current Perestroika, you'll see that there's a VP oil sticker kind of where it shouldn't be. It's because I kind of got stuck in a blind nut and I had to cut it off, the bolt off, and it kind of screwed everything up. So take your time, get a tap set. It's very valuable. Run it through, make sure that these blind nuts will take a bolt, because these blind nuts are almost impossible to get to. The top ones, practically impossible. The bottom ones you can sort of get to from the inside, but if you pop one of these blind nuts off, it's going to be really hard. Wanted to really quickly show you what the factory spinner looks like. You probably saw it in some of the thumbnails on my previous videos, but this is the included aluminum spinner that comes with the kit. It's a 2-blade spinner. I have here, I think this is a 17x10 prop that I had lying around, but I just wanted to show you what this comes with out of the box. That big 5-inch carbon fiber spinner is extra. I got that from Northwest RC, and really happy with it. I think it looks perfect for the part. But if you don't want to do that, this is what comes with the kit. So now is the fun part where we're starting to experiment with spacing, and what I did here is I took a Dremel and cut out the fake radial, the black plastic, because I'm using such a big spinner. I just think it looks better this way. So I have the cowl on the front of the fuselage, put the spinner on there to get an idea to see where I want it to sit, because it's really up to you to determine where you're going to drill the holes to mount the cowling. So this is where I want it, so I'm going to mark it with some tape. So I'm going to have to take things off and put it back on. You'll see why here in a second, but I want to get an idea of how far back it goes. So I'll just kind of use some blue painter's tape and mark this up, so when I put it back on, I'll know it's not back too far. Here is a really good tip. The first time you put this on, make a mark on the center of the cowling and mark it with the center of the fuselage, because this rotation, it's pretty tight on there and you can't just easily rotate it. So if you're using these lines from the beginning, as you're inserting it, it'll be easier for you. Also, I had to sand this portion of the fuselage to get the cowling to even fit. I don't know if they used too thick wood right there. It's just thin balsa, but I took the covering off and sanded it, and that's how I was able to get the cowling on. Your mileage may vary, but that's what I had to do. Okay, so we have the holes with the blind nuts for the cowling, and we take some cardboard, and you're seeing I'm using a box from my Dual Sky speed controller. Just cut them up, drill holes with the bolts, and we will put the bolts in and then tape down the pieces of cardboard as securely as possible, so when we put the cowling on, we'll know where to drill. Here's a tip from when I did this. I would make these a little bit long so the front end of this piece of cardboard sticks out into the motor box area, so it's a little bit easier for you to slide the cowling on. But again, I can't stress how important it is to make sure you tape these down and this cardboard doesn't move, because if it does move, you're going to run into problems when you drill into that fiberglass cowling. So we'll go ahead and tape up the bottom one as well. Obviously, you're going to have to do this on both sides, but I'm just showing this side of the fuselage. And also we see that that first piece of tape that we put on, that's going to kind of tell us how far the cowling goes. That's helping us put the tape for this, because we don't want to put tape further than that, because then we're going to have problems sliding the cowl on. This cowl fits pretty tight. You'll see that as you go on. But again, get these as secure as possible. All right, so now it's all secured. We are going to pull it off. And again, I wanted to show you kind of how tough it is. This is after I've sanded it and I've got it going on pretty well. Again, you can see me pull it off, move it forward. It is kind of tough, and you can see me using these alignment lines so I know the cowl is rotated in the right orientation. You can see there it's off a little bit, so I have to kind of pull it off again to move it over a little bit. I just wanted to prepare you for this, because this could get kind of tedious, but be prepared and take your time, you'll be fine. In the shot here, you can see at the bottom that I am underneath those cardboard templates, and you can see that it's not going to go past that tape. And again, take your time, be careful, don't force anything. You don't want to crack the fiberglass, you don't want to crack a piece of the fuselage. Just take your time. It's a tight fitting cowl, but you'll get it. All right, you've done your test fitting. Maybe you've taken the motor off, added some washers, or took away some washers. This is what I ended up with. And in fact, because I cut away that fake radial, the back end of the spinner is actually inside the cowl, because there's about 1/4 of an inch or so before the prop comes. So I have a really great gap here. I think it looks sweet. This is right where I want the cowl. It's in fact the cowl's a little bit forward, maybe about 1/8 of an inch then on my Perestroika, but nonetheless, this is where I want it. Let's use the templates and drill. All right, so I didn't plan this. In fact, I thought I messed up right here, is that I'd put the Checkmate logo on the cowl for pictures, and I didn't even think to place it in between here. Unfortunately, my top hole for mounting the cowl is right on the C. Actually, and because I measured it right on both sides, it's actually right on the other side as well. I thought I was messing up, but stay tuned, you'll see. I think it turned out pretty well. So what I do is I take an X-Acto knife and kind of twist it around to establish a little divot for the drill to go into. I will then use a slightly smaller drill bit to drill this hole. I go carefully, and in fact, I normally put a piece of blue painter's tape in between the template and the cowling, but because I'm actually drilling through the vinyl graphics here, I didn't do that. But take your time, drill, and you should pop right through into that blind nut that's in the fuselage. Now for this bottom hole, it's not through graphics, so I am going to put a piece of blue painter's tape here to drill through. Just kind of makes that hole in fiberglass a little bit cleaner. And in fact, this isn't painted fiberglass. I'm not sure how they did this, but it's actually, I think it's covered. It's really neat because the front of the cowling is definitely painted that silver, but behind that, the front of the cowling, I'm pretty sure it's like matted covering. I don't know how they did it. It stays on pretty good. It seems like it's painted, but either way, do the same thing. This is what I do. I use a hobby knife to make a little divot to establish a place for the drill bit to sit. I just take my time, use a smaller drill bit than I'm going to use for the bolts, and you should punch right through that blind nut in the fuse. Alright, so I was a little worried about that hole in the graphics, but when I do cowl bolts, I usually use these neoprene backed washers just to kind of keep some force on the bolt, and I think generally looks good. But you can see I'm using one here on the bottom mount, but because the bolts are black, it's going to work out perfectly. If I don't use one of those washers, the bolt almost disappears. So something that I thought I messed up on, totally by luck, actually turned out perfectly, because when this is all said and done, you will not even notice that cowl bolt there. So pretty cool. All right, we have the other side done. The cowl is officially mounted. Let me rub off some of this dust, some of this fiberglass dust, and let's put on the spinner. Again, this is a Falcon 5-inch carbon fiber spinner, and this is a Zohr 1810x3 prop. We'll get this fitted here. That spinner, again, purchased from Northwest RC. Get that situated, and we want to show you how this spinner goes on. Again, this is the spinner. This is extra. This is not included with the kit. And if you're curious about the Dual Sky GA3500, you can see that it comes with a prop washer and two nuts that go on the prop shaft. The big one goes in first, and there's a flange on the back of it that centers that prop washer. So it's takes a little bit of effort to get that on there. And then there's a smaller safety nut that goes in, and there's a flange on that sits in the back of this bigger washer just to kind of keep it in place. This spinner from Falcon doesn't attach via the shaft. It attaches via little bolts around the spinner backplate, but just wanted to show you how this goes on. Cool thing about this Falcon spinner, it actually came with a little 1.5mm driver to help you do exactly this. But it's neat. You can kind of see the angle. I have the spacing so far back that those bolts are pretty exactly even with the front of the cowl, which means the back plate is actually inside the cowl, and I'm really happy how this turned out. So here it is from the side. About, is that, it's not a 1/4 of an inch, that's an eighth or whatnot, but here it is all buttoned up. The cowl is mounted and bolted on, and that's some really good prop clearance. Some people love striving for amazing prop clearance. It's never been a big thing for me, but for this plane, I think it needs it. Put in the effort, took my time, and got that just right. So everyone, that was episode 5, doing everything in the front of the plane. Right now we have the tail, we have the elevator and rudders hinged, and we have the retracts, we have the ailerons, the flaps, all those servos mounted, and now finally we have the cowling mounted, we have the electric motor mounted, and then for me, we have this awesome carbon fiber 5-inch spinner with planning to run an 1810x3 prop. So next episode is going to be all the internals, servos, push rods, etc., etc. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in a few days.